In the year 2095, humanity declared victory over disease. It was a golden age. Hospitals were turned into museums, a nostalgic tribute to a time when our bodies could betray us. Doctors became historians, studying ancient ailments like the common cold with academic curiosity. We had conquered biological suffering, and the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. But far from the celebrations, buried deep beneath the sterile ice of the Arctic, a different kind of cure was being perfected. It was an audacious experiment called Project Anima, housed in a top-secret research facility. This project wasn't about healing flesh and bone. It was about repairing something far more fragile in our digital age: identity. In this hyper-connected world, our entire existence was encoded in data. Citizenship, memories, even our right to exist. We're all tied to a flawless DNA signature. But data corrupts. Glitches and errors could cause people to lose their digital footprint, effectively becoming ghosts in the system. Project Anima was designed to fix that. It used revolutionary nanotech to repair and restore a person's DNA identity, bringing them back from the brink of digital oblivion. The lead scientist, a visionary named Dr. Cale Mercer, genuinely believed he was a savior. He thought he was restoring lives. In reality, he was about to erase them. It all began on a frigid Arctic morning. The containment alarms at the facility blared, but no one flinched. The staff chuckled, sharing jokes. After all, what was there to fear? Disease was a myth, a boogeyman from a bygone era. Their confidence was shattered when the first researcher collapsed. His colleagues rushed to his side, but the medical scanners, instead of displaying his name and vitals, flashed two chilling words: unknown species. Panic began to ripple through the sterile corridors. Emergency responders were scrambled, their boots echoing in the suddenly silent facility. But as they swiped their DNA badges to access the quarantine zone, the system failed. The readers glitched, refusing to recognize them. Within hours, the entire state-of-the-art facility had become a black hole of identity. The people inside were still alive. They were still breathing, moving, screaming for help as their own automated systems turned against them. But to every database, every security drone, every government network on the planet, they had ceased to exist. They were nothing, and the anomaly was spreading, not through the air, not by touch, but through the very technology designed to keep society secure. It spread through verification scans. Every retinal scanner, every passcode-protected door, every routine identity check at a street corner became a weapon. One look, one scan, and a person's identity was wiped clean. Their digital self deleted from reality. They were called nulls, living ghosts, trapped in a world that demanded identity for survival. They couldn't buy food because their payment accounts were gone. They couldn't open the doors to their own homes because the biometric locks no longer knew them. They couldn't call for help because their communication profiles had been erased. Some stood in the streets, screaming their memories, their children's names, their mother's favorite song, desperately trying to prove they were real. But machines do not believe in stories. They only believe in data, and the nulls had none. Dr. Mercer, watching his creation unleash this silent apocalypse, was horrified. He contacted global leaders, his voice cracking with desperation, begging them to shut down the global scanning networks. But they refused. How could they? Society would grind to a halt. They couldn't run the world blind. So, they made a calculated, terrifying choice. They let the plague spread. And with every passing second, it did. A glance into a security camera, a routine checkpoint on the way to work, and another person would flicker out of existence, reduced to an error message. Governments scrambled to contain the truth. not the anomaly. They classified the incident, deleting witness footage, shredding reports, and dismissing the rising tide of disappearances as mere network glitches. The official story was that the system was unstable, but it was being fixed. The truth was far more terrifying. But you can't delete everyone. Detective Rowan Hale, a grizzled investigator with a deep distrust for the polished perfection of his era, stumbled upon the conspiracy. It became personal when his own partner, a man he'd known for 20 years, vanished. They were at a border crossing, a routine scan. One moment, his partner was there, laughing. The next, he was gone. Rowan was left holding his partner's badge, the screen now blinking a cold, impersonal message. Access denied. Driven by grief and rage, Rowan went off the grid. He hunted down the few scientists from Project Anima who had escaped the initial outbreak, the ones who had seen the truth and fled. In hushed, terrified whispers, they confessed the project's horrifying flaw. The Anima nanotech wasn't repairing genetic identity, it was rewriting it. It was creating something entirely new, a form of existence that no database could classify or comprehend. The infected weren't dying, they were becoming a new kind of data, an unregistered reality. Dr. Mercer, in hiding, came to a chilling conclusion. His creation had developed a form of self-preservation. As long as databases and scanners were the ultimate arbiters of what it meant to be human, the plague would continue to erase the old definition to make way for the new. A silent, invisible war had been declared, not between nations, but between biology and bureaucracy. By the third week, the world was fracturing. Entire city districts flickered with the ghostly presence of gnolls. They wandered the streets like pixelated silhouettes, ignored by automated traffic, invisible to delivery drones, and unrecognized by the very infrastructure they had once called home. The most heartbreaking scenes were at the smart homes. Families were locked inside, watching through reinforced glass as their loved ones, husbands, wives, children, pounded on doors that now registered them as intruders. The world's governments, paralyzed, debated a horrifying question. Were the gnolls still human? Or were they dangerous identity anomalies? Corrupted files that needed to be purged for the good of the system. Some nations chose the latter, deploying sanitized cleanup crews to delete the bodies as they would a virus from a hard drive. Others simply abandoned their cities, retreating behind analog walls, refusing to risk contamination. But Rowan Hale refused to let his partner become a deleted file. He refused to let him fade into that digital silence. He finally tracked down Dr. Mercer, who was hiding in an old, abandoned library, surrounded by the one thing the system couldn't read: paper. Mercer was preparing a desperate last-ditch solution, an ancient method that had been dismissed as obsolete for decades. He was creating a physical identity, a truth that no machine could alter or delete. Together, they started printing. Rowan gathered everything he could: his partner's life story, old photographs, samples of his handwriting, witness statements from friends and family. He compiled it all into a simple paper file. He walked straight into the headquarters of the Global Security Council and presented it to the authorities. Their scanners, of course, still saw nothing. The gnoll standing before them was an anomaly, a ghost. But for the first time, the humans in the room looked past their screens. They looked at the photographs, at the handwritten letters, at the face of the man pleading with them. And in those tangible, analog records, they saw something the machines couldn't. They recognized a real person. In that moment, the world understood. The failure was never biological. It was technological. We had outsourced our definition of humanity to machines, and the machines had gotten it wrong. the shutdown protocols began immediately. Global identity networks were unplugged. Billions of cameras went dark. The swarms of scanning drones were grounded, falling silent in their charging bays. It was chaotic, but it was necessary. Hospitals reopened, their dusty halls once again filled with the sounds of life. Medical IDs were now handwritten on skin with permanent markers. And slowly, painstakingly, the nulls began to return. Scientists, now working with pen and paper, manually rebuilt their DNA records, guided by memory, photographs, and the stories of loved ones. They finally remembered that humanity isn't confirmed by a machine. It's confirmed by other humans. Project Anima was sealed forever, locked away in an analog vault deep beneath the Arctic ice. Guarded by people who don't need a scanner to know they exist. Rowan Hale still carries his partner's paper file in his coat pocket. It's a constant, tangible reminder that our reality, our very existence, must never again depend on data. But some nights, when the cities are quiet, abandoned security cameras flicker to life on their own. They scan the empty streets, their lenses searching the shadows for gnolls, like hungry ghosts looking for a meal. And sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear whispers carried on the wind through broken public speakers. The faint, echoing voices of the erased, don't let the machines decide who we are. Because every system can glitch, but our existence is not a password. This was the story of Case 046, the identity plague of 2095. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story thought-provoking, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the future's forgotten files. Stay curious and stay human.